Thank you everyone for joining. So today's webinar is from IT to the enterprise, service management the easy way. My name is Sunil Dougal and I'm the Chief Revenue Officer at Xcession, and we'll be joined by Neil and Erwan who will do the main content of today's presentation. So if I just quickly can run you through the agenda. We'll just spend a couple of minutes setting the scene for you and then introducing Neil and Erwan. Neil will spend 10 or 15 minutes talking about enterprise service management in action, so with some specific use cases from industry showing how we've been able to introduce an enterprise service management platform into an organization and with a great deal of success. Then we'll talk, we'll pass over to Erwan. Erwan will talk about the power of iTop and give you a great use case in the extensibility and the simple configuration that iTop offers to meet really a whole range of different potential ESM needs. And then we'll make sure that we have 5 or 10 minutes at the end to answer any questions that you have. Any questions you do have, please put them in the questions section in the GoToWebinar panel, and we'll make sure that Neil and Erwan answer those at the end. So just moving on and setting the scene from an enterprise service management perspective. Implementing an ESM technology set can be one of the most important, but also one of the most challenging journeys a company can make. And so if you're thinking about taking that leap, then really there's a great use case to learn from. IT has been using case management tool sets for many, many years. A whole ecosystem has built up around that. A best practice framework many people will be familiar with. ITIL has grown up to support those case management requirements. So I guess the key question is, what lessons can we learn from IT and transfer them into the line of business? And really that's what we hope to talk about in more depth today. So let me introduce you to our two main speakers. Neil is the COO of Xcession, but Neil has implemented and extended IT and ESM systems in some of the largest and most complex environments in the world, from large commercial organizations all the way through to public sector defense businesses. Erwan's been in the IT industry for 25 years and is an ITIL and an ITSM ESM expert. He is the founder of Combodo and the best person to take us through the capabilities of the tool set. So I am now going to hand over to Neil, and Neil will take you through some real life use cases. Neil, over to you.
Thank you, Sunil. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody. I hope you're all having a good day. As Sunil said, my background is in implementing IT service management systems, but in recent years it's definitely grown into how to use some of that knowledge that we got and broaden that out into the rest of the environment within organizations and look at enterprise service management. So I thought I'd just start off a couple of minutes just going through what is ESM when we talk about iTop in this space. And it's worth just by starting off and saying, and some of you may already know this, iTop is very flexible. It's very easy to configure and customize, and Erwan will go through some of that later on in the webinar. But in terms of using iTop in this enterprise service management space, it is all about taking what works well and what has been tried and tested in the IT space and applying this to other parts of the organization. And there's a couple of prime examples that we've seen where we've been able to capitalize on what's gone on within IT and then replicate that into other parts of the business. And the classic examples, human resources and facilities, where they've got a number of business processes which are very similar. If you think about, I've got a light bulb that's gone out in the office, it needs to be fixed. It's very similar to some of the IT business processes that have been tried and tested. So we've got some very similar business processes to those in IT service management. So just to give you a couple of real life examples of how we've actually delivered iTop into that ESM space. One of our existing customers, who was a major security company, they were asked to set up some COVID-19 test centres in the UK. So this had to be very quick because, as we know, these things were moving very fast during the pandemic. So we were asked whether we could actually provide them with solutions to address the business problem, because they needed two things. They needed one to deal with the facilities type stuff. So these tents in car parks, as I called them, because they were mini marquees in car parks, they were a mini office, and they had all of the sort of facilities type stuff that you would find in an office, just in a bit of a portable mode. So it was everything from the water fountain's not working, so somebody's got to come and fix it. You've got to get an engineer out there, or they need more yellow clinical waste bins. It was all of those sort of things, and deploying iTop into that enterprise service management space really fit it quite well, because we could say, well, yeah, the water fountain is not working, that's an incident, and we'll follow the sort of incident life cycle. Or we need more yellow clinical waste bins, that's a request, and we can follow that through the life cycle. So it really fitted quite well. And then the other side, there was a second strand to this, which was that they wanted an HR management system. Because they said, well, they've got both requests and incidents that were coming in from the staff at the COVID test centres. They had a high turnover of staff as well, because of the nature of this stuff, and they needed to be able to record whether people were asking for extra HR requests, or whether there were complaints or grievances, and they needed a system to record it. So those were the two main use cases that we had. So what did we actually do to implement this? How did we address that business problem? Well, we actually put in two separate iTop systems, one for facilities, one for HR, because they were very aware that they wanted to keep the data separate. So the sort of air gapping them by having the data segregation was what they wanted. And going back to the original thing about this had to be stood up quickly, we did this within a few weeks, and that included the customization that we had to make. So there were a few business drivers that they wanted to be able to analyze information by region. So a number of sites would be in a region, so we had to tweak the data model to include region and supplier. We made some screen label changes, and this is where just simply changing a few labels on the screen and calling it, we called it HR case management. So suddenly it became specific to them. They then said, well, this is what we always do, we deal with cases. Made it really easy for them, and then we onboarded all the staff and did the training in iTop, which was actually quite straightforward, because iTop is quite intuitive and quite self-explanatory. And then what we did, the last point there, was we said, let's wait for the system to be in for a period of about 4 weeks before we start looking at modifying the dashboards, because once you had some data, and once then the management knew what they wanted to see out of it, it was easier to make sure the dashboards were right. So just at a high level, the process flow, and this, again, this links back into how to use all the knowledge that we've all built up in the IT space, how to use that productively into the enterprise space. You can see there the process flow is quite straightforward. The request came in, it's logged with the auto responses that you need and you want, and then the assignment to either themselves or to other people in the team or to third-party vendors, because going back to the water fountain, you've got to get an engineer, and it's a water engineer company who came out to do that. But that's then processed through the whole life cycle, and the analyst, the agent, would actually make sure that they saw that through the life cycle. But all of this was in a controlled and managed environment in iTop. Previously, when they tried to do this initially, they did it in Excel and it was not working very well. Again, from a IT perspective, all the actions are recorded and audited, the logs are great, and then you've got the permissions and roles, so the visibility based on the roles and permissions, people could see what they needed to see. So a couple of the key features within iTop that we use for these particular ESM scenarios. So like I mentioned before, there was this high turnover of staff, and we did say about, well, you could use the portal side of iTop. At this point, it was decided just to use email because it was easy then with the turnover of staff for the email to generate the iTop request so that it was automatically created. Using the sort of the standard queue mechanism of being able to have all of the requests coming into a central bucket, and then the team choosing to assign them to themselves or to other people, was following pretty standard ITIL type processing. The personal dashboards were great because people wanted to be able to do things slightly different from one agent to the next, and the fact that you can personalize your dashboards just yourself as an end user to help you manage your queues. And we did also implement the SLA, the service level agreement functionality, so that people could be tracking and making sure that things were resolved or addressed in those service levels. So that really helped to improve and manage the productivity of the team across both of these use cases, the facilities and the HR. And then using the analytics to monitor the progress of the requests. So especially in the HR space, the senior management team were monitoring all of these things, as I said, by region and by site, to see, was there a trend and did they need to take any actions for anything that was going on in a particular region or a particular site. So yeah, lots of great management information, which was very easy to configure and set up so that they could get what they needed out of it. A few things that we thought might be pertinent here, just to really help you if you're thinking of going on this journey. A few things about how to get it right. So really, all of these systems are data driven. So data quality is very, very important, and we did spend time up front with the customer helping them to make sure that they had all of this data up to date and correct, so that we could load it quickly, easily, it would work, everybody would know exactly what it was. So we had to focus on region, sites, users, so their roles and their permissions, what they could see, and the suppliers, the vendors that were supporting some of this, but also the services. So what actually are the services that we needed to set up? So we had to go through all of the different services that were appropriate, both in facilities and in HR. So it was things like, yeah, on the HR side, is it a complaint? Is it a high profile, low profile, so we could apply different SLAs to it. So we spent a lot of time in that short, intense getting it set up, working with the client to actually make sure that they understood their services and that we then could model them into iTop to make sure that it did what they needed to. Next point there, really important to manage the change process. People and technology, you've just got to make sure that you bring everybody on the journey with you, and this is about the leadership and the vision setting to make sure that people actually know where they're going and why they're going there, and make sure that you've got all of those things done, the softer side, rather than just here's a piece of software, it's going to work for you, because unfortunately we know that often doesn't work. You need to make sure you bring the people on that journey with you and cover everything else. And the last point there about utilizing existing processes, we made sure that we tried to make sure that the client used existing known processes, and then we just tweaked them incrementally. We didn't throw it away and start again, because we said, look, iTop's got all these great inbuilt workflows. It's tried and tested for very, very similar business processes. So it's we said, look, it's easy to grow iTop based on your business needs, and do that slowly, incrementally, so that you don't end up having to rewrite stuff and lose lots of time. So that's an overview from me of what we did to use iTop in the ESM space. It was a really positive experience for the client. The users loved it, and it was really easy for them to onboard themselves and get using it. And we think it was a really positive overall set of projects. So now I'm going to hand over to Erwan, who's going to take you through some more of the detail.
Thanks a lot, Neil, and hi everybody. So now I will present you, I would say, what service management and in general, and how we can handle all the modification and stuff in the ITSM designer. And I wanted to start first with our view of the service management. So for us at Combodo, service management means first managing a service catalog. When I talk about managing a service catalog, I talk about how we define the services we provide to the users or to the customers, which contract we have with them, with which SLA and engagements in order to provide the best service quality. The second part we have to deal with is all the assets we use to manage the services. So for IT, it's everything related to the network, the system, and the applications. But if you talk about another domain, it could be, for example, the tools or the vehicles you use. Then you have to interact with the users, the people consuming your services. So we have to use mails, we have to use chats or whatever portals to communicate with them. Then we have to define the processes. So we have to manage the processes related to the services. Do I have to deal with incidents, service requests, or do I have to manage a change in my environment? And last, but maybe the most important, we need to measure the metrics corresponding to the service in order to see if the quality of the service corresponds to what we have promised to the end users. Most of the topics are already available in iTop to handle enterprise service management, whatever domain you deal with. The service catalog is completely generic. You just have to document your services, your SLAs, your contract, your provider contract with the terminology you use in your domain. You can manage incident and request management as well, and they adapt according to the services you provide, computing automatically the SLAs based on what you have defined. So whatever you are handling, facilities or human resources issue, as Neil said before, sometimes you won't have to do any modification in iTop. You just have to call that an incident based on a human resource service, and that's it. We have a knowledge base, which is quite generic as well, display on the portal. And so depending on how many frequently asked questions you define and so on, according to your domain, the users will be able to use it. We have a user portal by default that is displaying the information regarding to your service catalog and your knowledge base. So it's there as well. And we have a large number of data model independent extensions that will extend the capability of iTop to improve your productivity. For example, mail to ticket creations or Kanban board or whatever. And whatever data model you have in iTop, it will work. Now, as service management is related to people, you may have to adapt the data model or the applications or your processes in order they fit the way you work. And for that, you will see with the ITSM Designer, which is a SaaS-based applications that allow you to customize the iTop data model. You can extend the data model to handle the new assets, adding fields, adding new element to manage. You can adapt or define processes according to the way you work. So you can simplify the process that exist already in iTop, create new ones, or complexify them according to the way you work in your company. You can implement metrics and dashboards. As Neil said, we can adapt them according to the way you work. We can adapt user right management because you may want to prevent people from doing some actions and so on. As the look and feel of your application is really important, you can change the application style in order to fit the way the look and feel of your company. You can adapt the user portal depending on what you would like to display to the users. You can create new portals. For example, if you would like to create a portals for particular agents for implement, it's possible. And you can implement automation in order to improve or increase the productivity of people and automate some actions. So all those capabilities can be done in the ITSM Designer. And to illustrate this, I won't do a demo because it's taking too much time. I will show you some screen copy in the Designer, but I will take the example of the management of communal services. So something I've implemented in my small city in order to manage facilities, road incidents, and so on in my city, which is very small. So first things you can do in iTop is modify the data model. And that's something very, very important in our philosophy. iTop is designed and made to be modified. The data model can be changed. You change the data model. It's not hard-coded in the applications. So you don't modify the core part of the applications. You just adapt or modify the data model that is provided by default. And the first things you may have to do is to create new characteristics for objects. So here I take the example of a person, and I will add a basic characteristic, which is the birth date. Why we had to do that in my city? Just because they have to track the old people during the COVID periods, and they, in order to inform them, contact them, follow up if they were in good health. That's the first objective of this information. And the second part, they have to register people that are older than 16 in order to register them for the military service. So that's why we adapt this in the iTop data model, which is not tracked by default when we deliver iTop. Then we could change the presentation of the informations. So we have here the birth date, and we had as well to manage information about the addresses in order to locate people if we have to meet them or whatever. At the end, the presentation that is displayed in iTop, it's this one. So we can completely adapt the way we present informations, and we just display information that are required. So if some elements are not useful, we can remove them from the applications. And that's really important for the ergonomy. And it's much more important when people are not IT people. They just have to deal with what they have to manage. Then we had to change the data model. And in what we call the configuration management part, we had to deal with new objects. And one particular object they had to deal with, which is not so funny, it's the grave. In fact, they have to manage, it's a responsibility of the city, they have to manage all the cemetery plots in the cemetery. So they had to document the different graves with reference, who owned the grave, when it was acquired, what's the end date of the concessions in order to renew it, and so on. So we had to document different characteristics. We had to document as well all the tools set they are using, because in the city they have to manage some road incident or whatever, as well as the vehicle and all the truck there. That's really important for them, for the maintenance, for the renewal, and so on. And so at the end, the guy responsible for managing the cemetery was able to track all the cemetery plot with the owners, the acquisition date, and the end of concessions date, which is really important for the renewal. It's the law in France. So as you can see, we are able to manage something else than a server or a network device. Then in the city, they had to adapt the processes. Okay, and one important workflow they have to follow up is the management of road incidents. Issue with light, garbage deposit, a tree that fell down on the road. So they had to implement the processes. And the first step we had to follow up is creating the different steps of the process. Then we have to create events in this process and transitions in order to draw and design the workflow. So here is a basic workflow in my city. There is a new road incident tracked by the citizen. The citizen is ongoing, so someone is working on it. Then it's fixed. And when the citizen is happy, he can close it, providing his satisfaction. And for each step, we can document the behavior of the field, what's mandatory, what's read-only, etc., in order really to enforce the process and control the data we need. Then we have a form, okay, with the minimum information required to track the incidents. And on the portal, it's even simplified for the end user. They just give a title, a description, and the geographical location where the incident occurred in order to locate it. Here is the workflow that is automatically deployed in iTop. As we have a process, we need to define metrics. To define the metrics, we can define what we call stopwatches in order to measure the time spent for the different states. So here we control how much time it took before fixing the incident. We define metrics and thresholds in order to track this activity and send automatically notification or call to whatever chat system or emails in order to inform the people. And we can define some metrics. And then when we deploy the modification, we can track how much time it took to fix a particular road incident. And why it's important for the city? Because the city house is closed most of the time. It's a very small city. And so tracking this helps people in the city and all the agents to fix the problem in order to please the citizen. Then, in order to have an ergonomic approach, they have to modify the menu and how we access the application. So for the road incident, we had to develop new menus entries and remove some useless ones. So here we create a new menu entry in order to track stuff with a dashboard to see how many incidents we have per day or per month, or whatever. Like Neil said, it's the capability to adapt the dashboards, for example. And at the end, here is the console used by the people in the city with a Kanban board in order to quickly move incident from one status to another. And this, for example, console was displayed on a tablet for all the agents. Then we have to adjust the end user portal because we want to interact and communicate with the end users. So we have added blocks and functionality to track road incidents and follow up the ongoing traffic or road incident in the city. So the end users can track their own incident and follow up them. They can submit new requests in order, for example, book or request an appointment with people in the city, and they can access the frequently asked question database, like how do I register for the school, how do I do this, or blah, blah, blah. Then we can change the application style. As I said, it has to fit the look and feel of the company or the city. So here we change the logo of the city with the famous French Marianne, which is the symbol of all the city in France. And we change as well the look and feel. So in iTop, which is normally gray and orange, they use their color, so blue and red, as well here, in order really to fit the company colors. And it's pretty simple to do in iTop via the ITSM design. And last but not least, we are able to activate generic extensions like the Enhanced Global Search to quickly find something in iTop, the Kanban board for agents in order they move tickets from one status to another, or these extensions, which is called hyperlink configurators, that allow us to create via configuration magic actions like how do I locate my road incident on Google Maps or OpenStreetMaps or whatever, which is very useful sometimes. So what are the big advantages of the designer? First, no development knowledge required. Via a graphical interface, you define your process, the data model you want to manage. You don't need developers for doing that. The customizations are compatible with all iTop generic features like export import, synchro dashboards, notifications, webhook, and so on. Okay, so you don't have to adapt the application to have your own data model working. And the customization are shared with us at Combodo, and so maintained over time. We know what you have done. We know what will happen when you will migrate, so we can help you in migrating to future release. You don't have to redo your customizations all the time when you change. Our philosophy is to keep your customization forever and help you in maintaining your applications over time. And last but not least, you have a single integrated application. It's not a set of applications that are grouped together. It's one application that help you to manage your business. But as Neil said, the designer does not define the needs. You have to know what you would like to do, which process you would like to manage, why. And that's really important, the designer does not handle the change management for the people. It's just implementing your modifications. So you have to coach or train or help your people in getting used to iTop. And for my city, the funny thing was that most of the people are not IT engineers. And so the complexity was to move them from a basic book and a pencil to a computer or a tablet. And that's why we have adapted the portals for them in order they use their phone or their tablets quite easily to track, for example, the cemetery plot in the cemetery.
Thank you everybody for attending, and also a massive thank you to Erwan and Neil for your insights today. This webinar will be available as a recording, so we'll make sure that that's available both on the Combodo website and the Xcession website as well. Yeah, thank you all very much.
Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.